Hey there, we're going to do some coding today. Let's get to it. So when we left off last time, we were working on the auto-deactivate activated widgets function, and we were planning that out, and we ran into some issues. We reorganized the code a little bit, and now we're going to just dive right back into it. Okay, so you can see here I started planning it out. Auto-deactivated activated widgets. If you remember, we want to get all the turned on switch elements, and for each switch element we want to get the names. Okay, and here's where we ran into a little trouble, right? Because we're going to get the parsed yeah, okay. Get the parsed data switch attributes. Then of these parsed data switch attributes, so this is going to be an array with all of the possible to activate switches on the element. But what we want to do is just get the turned on ones. So filter the parsed attribute array, or we'll just say parsed array. So it just includes the turned on switches. And let me see, look at the turned on switch names. Yeah, I think that's fine, because we already have a function for this. And let's see what we're going to do next. So we wrote out this last time. So this is like one example, and then this is a second example below this line. I just had this example state kind of planned out. So already, when we have this already activated, and we have this element which has this switch name and this switch name, and then this one's turned on, what do we do when auto-deactivate is called? And so I wrote these numbers ahead of it, saying, okay, first of all, we get the turned on switch names. Then we filter through the parsed array of switch names so that we can get this data too, right? Because we're going to need the custom name when we turn it off. Oh, sorry. So we get this first. Then we filter this through the already activated elements and switches. Then if it makes it through that, so if it wasn't already activated this time around, then we're going to get the more advanced data, which is whether we can auto-deactivate it, right? That's important, and the custom name, so that if we can auto-deactivate it, we're not just removing the switch name, we're also removing the custom name. And then lastly, we're going to turn off any of the switches that have made it through through that process, basically through this filter, right? Okay, so let's use that. So for each switch element, get this turned on switch names, get the parsed data switches attribute, filter the parsed, no, okay. So this is where we're going to do this. Filter out the switch names that were already activated. Then we're going to get the parsed data switches attribute, filter the parsed array so that it just includes the turned on switches that haven't been activated this time around. Okay. Or I'll just say that haven't been activated. And then, what was the last step? So, and then we're going to just turn those off, right? Turn off this list of filtered switches. Okay, and now one thing I'm a little confused about is, so we have these process switches with the name, the element, the custom name, and and auto. So if we just pay attention to the name and the element, what I wanted to make sure of that we weren't really paying attention to last time was the element, that the element matches, right? So, okay, basically, let me just go through this one more time, right? So if I say I click a button and it activates a switch, right? But there's another switch of the same name over here. But this switch was activated because the switch trigger had a context of parent on it. So it activates its parent, right? With the switch name that's specified. Then we don't want to auto-deactivate this switch over here, right? If it wasn't affected this time, right? Because only this one was, because this is the parent and that's the context we specified. So when we're auto-deactivating the switches that have been activated and we're going through everything, we want to not just look at the switch name. We also want to look at the element. So the first thing we do is get all the turned on switch elements. This is going to be included over here, right? This element is going to be included in all of the turned on switch elements because for some reason it happens to be on, okay? However, when we go through when we go through all of the processed switches, we're going to filter this out. Or no, we're not, right? Because it wasn't processed. So, okay, sorry. So we're going to filter this one out, but not this one. So this one's going to stay on. Okay, got it. So last time I misspoke, because last time I was thinking it was the other way around. No. So this one was processed because it's the parent of the trigger. So it's going to be part of the process switches that we have right here, right? So ideally, we're going to filter that out. We're not going to worry about it. It's done, right? But this one over here, we have to go through it and check, does it need to be auto-deactivated, because it wasn't processed this time around. Now the way we're going to do that is we're going to get all of the process switches, so both of them, sorry, not all of the turned on switch elements, which is both of them, and then we're going to loop through the names and the elements. So we get the names here, and yeah, so we need, sorry, so this does need to be up here. Sorry, sometimes next day I lose track of, you know, what's really going on. So here, yeah, so here we need to get the parsed switch attribute because that's going to be that's going to give us the element too, which is something we're going to need to match against the already activated. And here we can move this up too, I think, because filter the parsed array so that it just includes the turned on switches. Okay, yep. So that we're going to do that first. Then we're going to filter out the switch names that were already activated. Okay, so let's write this a little bit clearer. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, this is fine for that. Then yeah, I don't know, this is mostly fine. So let's just have a 2 here, and we can have A, B, and C in here, I guess. So get the turned on switch names, I'll put a comma like this, C, the parsed data switches attribute. Is there a better way of saying this? How about get the switch data from the element, get all of the switch data from the element, e.g. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit tired, I guess, this morning. Filter the parsed array so it just includes the turned on switches. We'll just say filter this array so it only includes the turned on switches. Filter out switches that were already activated by matching their name and element. And then E is going to be turn off this final, turn off every switch in this final list. Okay, so that works for me. So the first thing we're going to do, let's see, so let's search for this. But instead of just searching for that, let's search for this. I'm sorry, I'm going to just pause real quick. Okay, I'm back. So we're here. Okay, so I use this selector in the isOn function, and that's all. So I don't have a function for getting all the turned on switch elements. I could write that function, but since I'm not, I thought I did. Huh. No, I guess I don't. Okay, so let's do. Oh, you know. No, I don't. I think this is the point where I would want to get them all. Okay, so let's say turned on switch elements, and we'll use our alias, and we'll do data switched on. So that should give us all of the turned on switch elements. Then for each of these, we're going to do this stuff. So let's move that up here. So we're going to get the turned on switch names, and we have a function for that. So let's do a switch element, and we have the function here, get turned on, and I'm going to say get turned on switch names, because this function doesn't return a list of objects, it just returns a list of names. So let's use that. Switch names from this. Okay, so turned on switch names. Okay, and you see how this matches like this, right? So I'm naming it based on the function I'm using to get this, it just makes the code a lot clearer, a lot easier to read, in my opinion. Okay, so then we'll put a space after that. Get all the switch data from the element. Okay, so this is where we want to use our parser, and we want to get the custom name and auto. So let's see. Oh wait, sorry. Let's get back down here. So we want to get the element too. Get all the switch data from the element. Okay. You know, so we don't need this element because we have it right here in this loop, so we can just use the parser. So I was thinking, if we go all the way up here, I was thinking we might need this thing. Let's just see if what this does. Okay, so it takes yeah, so it takes an action and it's going to get all the target switches. This isn't what I want, but I do like that. Well, get switches data. Yeah, okay, this is what I want. Switch elements and switch name. Get switches data. So this is a little confusing for me to read through now, but let me just see real quick. So given some elements and a switch name, this is going to map through the elements and okay, it's going to map through the switch elements. It's going to find the single data for a switch, because right, we're not going to have a case where we're going to have like switch name space switch name, right? They're not going to be named the same. So there's just going to be one named one thing. So when we pass in this, we're going to find the one that matches exactly that. So find returns a single object. Then we attach the element to that. And so, okay, so get switches data should probably be named get. Okay, so it loops through all of these elements, grabs just the data for this one, and then get switches data by name from elements. Get switches by name get list of switches? I don't know. I think get switches by name from elements is pretty clear. Okay, so now that we know what this does, so we give it a name and we give it a bunch of elements, can we use it here? Get all the switch data from the element. Nope, it doesn't make sense. So let's say switch data, and we're going to use the parse switch attributes. So it's not the switched on, it's not the switch action, it's not the switched up. It is definitely this. And I just want to see, what is parse data attributes? Okay, that's the file we're pulling it from. Okay, So we're going to do this, parse switch data attributes, and I believe that this gets an element as well. Okay, so this doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry I'm getting a little distracted today, but I promise this is how I code. So I just like, I think of this as like editing a book or editing, a short story. Like if I'm reading through the short story and something sticks out to me as not making sense, I want to kind of smooth it over, right? Because even though my primary concern for the book as a whole is that it's useful and, sorry, not useful, sorry, I was going back to code. So is that it's like fun to read, entertaining, tells a really good story. Um, when I'm editing, when I'm in the editing mode, my number one priority is that there's no like really rough transitions, rough bumps along the way. So as much as I can smooth it over as I go along, the better I'm going to get at smoothing it over, at the start, sooner. So I want to go into my parse data attributes, and I want to see, so when I make the parse function, it returns a parse function that returns, sorry, when I call make parse function, it returns a function that takes in an element and an attribute name. So I make the parse function like this. So what I would think is that maybe the first argument here, because okay, what's confusing about this is that I'm saying parse switch attributes. This should know that I'm looking on the data switches attribute, right? I mean, that should be a tiny bit more tightly coupled there, I think. Um, so yeah, so I could make like another intermediary function, but I think in this case I don't really want that. So I think what I want is for this first argument to be the attribute. And you know what I could do? I could pass in as the second argument this list, like a list of the keys for the return object. And so I could do like data switches here, and then that. I kind of like this array from arguments, which is the only thing that's, because I've never done this before, I mean, like, yeah, I don't think I've ever done it before. But arg names, and that's where I use it. Okay. So yeah, it doesn't, I don't know why I thought it needed to be that way. I guess it was just like nice. It was just kind of cool. Yeah, so now I'm a little worried about tightly coupling this attribute. But I think it's fine because I'm always, so I guess it's nice to be able to parse the parse a string without an attribute passed in, right? Having that be a little bit separate is a nice thought. I don't have a case right now where I need to do that, where I need to parse a string that's not directly connected to an element. But I could imagine a case where, like, I've already pulled out all of these attribute strings and I just need to go through them and parse them real quick. I guess in that case, I would have to come back here and kind of split out that that part of this function. But I think for now, just yeah, having this be attribute name and then having this be so our name. So these are like keys, key names. So our name. Let's search for this, just to make sure we're not missing any of them. And we'll say that key name. Okay, and then for attribute name, we don't pass it in here. It's just there. I like that. And then we're going to do the same thing with these. And so we're going to have the data dash. So switch actions. Let's just go into here just to make sure that we're getting the right ones. So data switch actions. I think this is just data switch stop, just to make sure. And switched on. Okay, cool. So that takes care of that. Now let's search for all of these. So yeah, the cool thing about the way I just did that is it doesn't matter if I miss any of these now, because the second argument just doesn't do anything in our parse function now, right? So I'm just passing an element. It doesn't take a second argument, so if I pass in the second argument, it's not going to be named anything. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it does, of course. You know, you want to clean up this stuff so it's not confusing for you later, or confusing for someone else. But if you can, I think in general you want to like change your function so that if there's some function out there that you don't know about, that for some reason you don't find, it's not going to break it. Okay, so now we have this, we have parse switch attributes, and I think I'm being a tiny bit stupid, but am I? I'm not sure. So I just have to pass an element now? Seems too simple. No, okay, that works. Okay, cool. So now I just have to pass in the element, and it's going to give me back the all of the attributes. Okay, so turn. Oh, I missed a step. Filter out switches that were filter this way, so it includes the turn on switches. Filter out switches that were already activated by matching their name and element, and then E, we're gonna filter out switches that have auto set to no auto. Okay. I have to go soonish, but I do want to finish this function real quick. So let's do that. Switch data. So we have this information. We have the switch element up here. Okay, so filter this array. Okay, filter this array so that it only includes the turned on switches. So this can be multiple switches. This isn't going to be, we're not going to use array.find here. because and on switches, because inside of this data switch on attribute, we could have multiple switch names, right? In which case, the data dash switches attribute better have, multiple multiple switches too. In which case, we might end up with like 2 or 3 here. Okay, so turned on switches is going to, so I think since it's a filter, it's possible we can do all 3 of these. So let's say switches to turn off. Another thing I could do, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. So I don't know, I was thinking, whatever. I was thinking another thing, switch data list. So another thing I could do is like just do a for each here on the switch data list, and then do C, D, E, and F all at once. But I kind of do like doing a filter here, especially if it's on like so little data. Like it's only 3 items. It's fine to do a filter and then loop through it again later, especially when it's clearer. Okay, so we're going to do switch data. So this is going to be something like this. Name, custom name, auto. So we're going to filter this array so it only includes the turned on switches. Okay, so we have these turned on switch names. So first of all, okay, I want to see array, I think it's contains, includes, array includes, and then that'll output true. Okay, so we've got turned on switch names includes switch data dot name. So if it includes this, we want to return true. Otherwise, we want to return false. So since I'm filtering multiple things here, what I want to do is I want to get the case where it's going to return false, and then I want to return false for that, and then if it doesn't, I want to go to the next one. Yeah, because if I say I did this, right, where I return true, then I'm not going to be able to filter for this, and I'm not going to be filtered for this. All I'm going to do is get the filter for this. So this is going to kind of short circuit me, and I might end up with some switches that were already activated, or some switches that have auto set to no auto. But this way, I can make sure that if this isn't true, like if basically I'm saying I'm not sure if I want to include this or not, right? I'm not sure if I'm finished yet. So I'm only going to use the cases that I'm sure I want to stop at, that I want to like filter these out, and then return false for those, and then I can continue on and add cases for the other ones. Okay, so filter out switches that were already activated by matching their name and element. Okay, so we have the name and we have the element. the name is this, and the element is this up here, and I want to match that against the processed switches. So it occurs to me that I can use find here. Let me see if I just do find there. Find returns the value of the first element in the array that satisfies the provided testing function. Okay, so JavaScript comparing DOM elements. So DOM elements are kind of cool because I'm pretty sure that you don't have to use like a custom function for this. Yeah. Is equal node and is same. Oh. Oh, MDM advises this is deprecated, and to use equals or triple equals. Okay, so yeah, I just want to make sure that, so let's do, should we use find or is there another way? Filter out switches are already activated and matching their name. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do processed switches, and we're going to search, or we're going to name this like matching element, or let's say like, yeah, I don't know, matching element. It could also be like is in or has been processed. And the nice thing I think about find is that it's going to return the first value that matches. So it's not going to continue the loop if there's, say, a ton of them. Okay, so we have the process switch, and we only want to return true if the processed switch name equals the switch data name and the processed switch element equals the switch element which we have up here. And that's a little long, so let's bring this onto a new line and do that. Okay. So has been processed. I guess I could do like switch has been processed. So if the switch has been processed, return false. I wish there was a better way of doing this. But these documentation strings should help a little bit. I don't know. Okay, so we'll do that, and we'll do this. Okay, so filter this array so it only includes the turned on switches, filter out switches that were already activated, by matching their name and element. Switch has one process. We're going to find this. I don't know why I use function and the like ES6 one, and not just one or the other. But I think it's because in some cases I do want the this that's naturally there. It's not a lot of the time, but like in an event listener, I think I do sometimes want it. I don't know. I don't really use it. I can just kind of convert these all to ES6. Okay, so filter out switches that have auto, the auto property set to no auto. Okay, so now we have the okay, so it occurs to me that since we want to filter all of these no matter what, the least expensive, most likely one should probably go towards the top. I'm not sure if it's the most likely one, but I do use it sometimes, so yeah, and it's very not expensive. So I think, oops, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so I think I'm going to put it at the top. Okay, so filter out switches that have the auto property set to no auto. Okay, so we have that on switch data. So we're going to say if switch data auto is set to no auto. And again, this should probably be a constant that lives somewhere else, and I import it, and it's standard across everything. But I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so if this is set to no auto, which means that when so say I click to activate a switch, and then I click elsewhere, if it's set to auto, this switch is going to automatically turn off. But if it's set to no auto, that means it stays open even if I click somewhere else. So if the switch data is set to no auto, we want to return false. Here, because we want to filter it out and we don't want to turn it off. Okay, so the final thing to do is loop through these. And I'm going to say switch object, and we're going to do turn off, and I believe it's something like this. It's something like that. So let's look. It's the, turn off just takes the switch object. So I use the element here. What is this? Switch. Let's switch names. Switch names. What else do I use here? So I use the switch name here. I use the element here. I use the name here. I use a custom name too. But I don't use auto. So to turn off, I could pass in name element And custom name? I don't know. I think it's fine to just have it accept a switch object. But it does mean that it makes less sense to pass in to like export this function, because like where am I going to get a switch object? Like in the like I'm going to have to parse it somehow, right? So I don't know. This is just kind of annoying. I'll probably fix that later. Okay, but this for now should be good. So now we have this auto-deactivate activated widgets. We can grab all the turned on switch elements. We loop through each one. We get the names of the so we get the names of each switch from the element. We get the names that are turned on. We then we get the all of the switch attributes from the same element. Then we filter through all of the elements. Oh geez. No, I think it's fine. Right? Filter add switches that were already activated. We're matching the array name out. Filter this array so it only includes the turned on switches. I guess it kind of makes sense that this one goes first because we're never gonna turn off a switch that's not turned on, right? But it doesn't really matter which order it goes in. I want it to make sense, right? So we have the turned on switch names. Does it include this guy? I think it makes sense that that goes first. Okay. Then we do C, and then D. Okay. But I don't know. I'm really not sure which order it should go in. This is fine, I think. Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna go through all of the. This variable name isn't working for me. So what is this, right? This is switches from the element. And we'll just say like all switches from like current element. All switches from current element. So this gives us an idea that's a little bit better, right? So now we know we're going through all of them, and that's why we need to filter down this data, because we want to make sure that it's been turned, it's actually on, and then we want to make sure that the auto isn't off. Oh, that's a good idea. Auto should just be off. No, but that would be confusing. So and then we want to filter out switches that were already activated by matching their name and element. And we do that here. So processed switches, we find one where the name matches the name and the element matches the element. And if there is one, then we return false. And we could also just like return, the opposite of that, or something like that, right? But I want to do this to be clear. Okay, cool. Turn off every switch in this final list. Switches to turn off. Gives me that. And then we loop through all of these and we turn them off. Okay, that makes sense to me. Next time we'll go through the rest of our to-dos. And that's going to be creating a create a when function, and it's going to be with that, and we'll export the when function. So the when function is going to be able to take the name of an action, like on or off, and the name of a switch. So that's like switch name, right, for example, and then an optional switch element, and then a callback function. So if that element is switched on with that switch name, for example, then this function will be called. Or if we don't want to specify the switch element, we can just specify and say, like, whenever this switch name is turned on, call this callback, and that'll be nice too. So that'll just give us a little extra functionality that we can build on top of this outside of the library. And then we're going to check the original, or not the original, but like one of the most recent versions of the widget.js library for any missing functionality that we might want to add into this library. Then we're going to review all the code by reading through it, and then we're going to set up some tests and experiment with this and see if it actually works. And as I've gotten more experienced at writing code, this has been the more comfortable way for me to do it. When I first started out, I wouldn't write everything else. I wouldn't write everything out ahead of time. I would just kind of play around with one little part at a time, and the direction and the flow of my program would kind of really waver at certain points, because I would have this idea when I started out, and then halfway through implementing it, I would have made this compromise and that compromise and this compromise based on my experience and what I thought was possible. And then I would have ended up with this kind of hodgepodge thing that kind of worked for what I wanted it to do, and it worked good enough, but it didn't really it wasn't really clear, it wasn't really forceful. So and it didn't get to the point of what it was supposed to do. So I learned this new way of doing things, which is kind of planning out everything ahead of time, writing it exactly with the API or the parameters that I would want and expect, and then going through the code later to make sure that it all works. And we'll see how it turns out this time. I don't think I've really ever written the library this big in this way. But usually what ends up happening is, I'll run into one or two spelling mistakes, one or two simple mistakes, and then, it'll mostly end up working, right? But yeah, sometimes there's a big glaring issue that I've just kind of completely glossed over. Hopefully that doesn't happen this time. But even if it does, at least I've kind of created an outline of what I want. Okay, so I'll see you next time, and we'll get into the exciting parts. It's probably going to be a few more episodes before we finish this. Okay, and then we'll get to the other libraries. Okay, I'll see you later. Thank you for watching and listening.